And we are willing to trust and respect in this profession in a way that the previous government were never willing to do.
The question is that the motion be agreed to.
Look, I am very pleased to stand and speak
The
on this
Honourable
piece
Nikki
of
Kaye.
Legislation. The first thing I'd like to say is I actually agree with the last comments of the Minister, whereby he talked about the value of the profession. And I think members of this House, many members in this House, will remember fondly the impact that their teachers have made in their life. But where we want to disagree with the member is that we also respect history. And I want that member to go back and read the Workforce Advisory Report and the report around the convicted sex offender that led to the changes for which the previous government made around the Education Council. And I went back and had 2 reads actually of the report, and I want to quote some things back to that member, because what he could have done is he could have come to the opposition and had a conversation in terms of the composition of the council. We did not have that from the minister. We didn't have that reflection on history, and I want to remind him of who was on that Workforce Advisory Group, John Morris, Pauline Winter, and that report was very powerful in terms of what it said and the reason that we had the change to a composition, skill-based body. It was really clear. Now is the time for industrial advocacy organisations to back the support for the establishment of an independent body capable of self-regulation and self-review. That's why we ended up in this situation where we created this independent body so that we could have and resolve. There were significant financial issues, there were issues around regulation, there were issues around review. That report goes through these significant issues. That's why we made the changes. And what the minister could have done is he could have come to the opposition and said, let's have that conversation in terms of elected members versus the composition of a skills-based approach. But we didn't have that. And so what we now have is a minister that spends several minutes talking about the name change of this organisation, and this is his priority, rather than recognising that the whole reason that the body was created was to reflect that significant piece of work done by John Morris and people like Pauline Winter. The second point that I want to make today is that this is a case where it's typical Labour Party. We are seeing an increase of this body to 13 members. I do want to acknowledge the members has kept the fact that there are not going to be all of the body elected. That is a positive move. I do want to acknowledge the fact that the member has also ensured that this body retains its statutory independence. But I want to also take a moment to say, why would the member fix something that is not broken? We have had to bail out the Teachers' Council under the previous government. We've had to make these changes, but I want to acknowledge Graham Stoup, and the member did acknowledge the existing Education Council. They are doing a fantastic job. They have proceeded in terms of the Code of Ethics and Responsibility. That work has happened. In fact, I just had a look at a number of their reports. They've submitted on a range of pieces of government policy. They have, I think, put in had over 2,000 submissions. They're doing incredible work, and they're doing incredible work because they are focused on what is good leadership, what is good governance, what is also good education policy. And again, they are born out of a significant piece of work that says the previous Teachers' Council got into financial difficulty, didn't have the ability to self-regulate, to properly self-review, and that's how we ended up with this body. So we on this side have not, we do not believe the government has made the case for this new composition via elected members. We think there was a significant piece of work done, including involving what was a convicted sex offender, to lead to the changes for the Education Council that we now have. We do not see the case in terms of spending more when you've got precious education funds on expanding the body to 13. We also think that the existing Education Council have proved not only that they're doing a stellar job by the engagement that they've had, and then finally I do want to address again comments by the Minister. He's made the point that they are consulting around fees in terms of teachers, and the point that I would make to the Minister that he does understand, and if he was listening he would acknowledge, which is the previous government has had to bail out the Teachers' Council. That is one of the reasons why we are in this situation and why we now have this situation where teachers' fees may be going up, is that the last government had to put a significant amount of funding in. And I think that when we talk to and we go out there, as we all do on the hustings, to nurses, to doctors, that we should have a little bit of equality here. We should have a body that is able to fund itself, and that is part of the reason why we ended up making the governance changes, moving to a skills and competency-based type model. And I do think, finally, that it is incredibly telling that this is the piece of legislation that we have from the Minister first off the bat. We don't have clarity around national standards. We don't have clarity around what's happening with the decile system. We have a whole group of children in partnership schools that have not a fricking clue about what their futures are, and instead the Minister spends several minutes talking about the name change of a particular bill. In my view, and I will go back to the beginning of his speech, if we want to talk about education priorities, it's this side of the House that cares about some of our most disadvantaged kids in partnership schools. It's this side of the House that cares about having financial viability. It's this side of the House that wants an Education Council that has skills and competency-based members. And to have the Minister, as his first piece of legislation, be dealing with this rather than some of the bigger issues in education, I think is disappointing. And then finally, I just do want to acknowledge all of the teachers in New Zealand, and also to make the point that this isn't about this side of the House not valuing input. In fact, actually the previous Minister, through the appointments process, had significant engagement, as I understand it, to ensure that we have a number of registered teachers on this Education Council. So I want to acknowledge what the previous Minister has done in that regard. Thank you.
I call Jan Tinetti.
Madam Speaker.